Good evening, everyone. Good evening to this lecture tonight. This is the fourth lecture in our series of lectures of this seminar, Discover the Law of Life. And I would say that you really want to discover the law of life because you came in spite of the rain, in spite of the darkness. You are the faithful ones. You are the ones that are really interested in knowing those deep things about how our body functions. I welcome you again, and as you know, these are some common announcements. Dr. Mueller provided some DVDs, a set of 3 DVDs about anxiety, conflict, and depression. Feel free to take one of those sets for a donation of any amount. He appreciates whatever you can give, and we also appreciate your generosity. Also, Dr. Mueller, as probably most of you know, he offered himself to talk to you privately, and feel free to schedule an appointment with Dr. Mueller, and well, he's glad to share his time with us. I don't see anybody who is new tonight here, or I think I do. So Dr. Mueller is a medical doctor, a professional coming from Germany in Europe, and he's spending this week with us here in North Carolina.
We have some new people here.
Yes, I noticed that.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome. As always, every night we are spoiled with a musical selection. And tonight we have two famous violinists, and they will touch our hearts with their music.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's good that we can continue our study that we started, and we will make a short repetition so that no one gets lost, even those who are new here. We want to understand by our reason what is the truth and why do we get sick. And for this cause, we need to know the law. If we don't know the law of how things work, then we can never know for sure why we get sick and that what is wrong in man. And we must have some measurement to know and to measure when things don't work well. And yes, we can do experiments, but they are only reliable if we have a law at the bottom of it as a measurement. So we have 4 things that are unchangeable and are for sure. The first is the laws of nature, the way we were created, the structure, how we were built, that what we need in order to function and to exist. And these 4 things, if we would know them, it will really help us to just know what's wrong in our life. And we would have a mind that could put itself on a foundation that it can itself not change. So we come back to see a little bit about the structure, because I believe it's very important to understand our structure. So we are made out of 2 elements, of body and of a spirit. When God created man, he took dust and formed a body, and when he blew in the breath of life to the nostrils, it became a living soul. Out of the earth, it became the body, very complex, and out of the breath of life, it became even a more complex spirit, which now together give the soul. But in this soul, in this unity between the spirit and the body, both elements do not lose their identity, but they co-work together. What the one can do, the other cannot do. And so we saw that the spirit who governs the whole body, it's like the pilot who sits in the cockpit, and from there he pushes the button. It's like the piano player who sits on the keys of the piano and he pushes the buttons. So the piano is the one that responds to it. So when the spirit takes decision, and we'll see tonight how he does that, he makes the electricity to the brain, and through this electricity that comes in the cortex and in the nervous system, then it goes to the hormonal system, to the immune system, to the digestive system, the blood sugar, and whatever we have in our body, everything goes and is governed by the way we think. That's very important to understand. And so the body just responds to that what we think, and the body responds to that what we eat and drink, and the chemistry we put into. If it's the right chemistry, he responds well. If it's the wrong chemistry, he responds wrong. Yes? So, we saw last night my first case where I saw how things work. This lady got headaches, and the headaches are something that is objective. It is something that is there in our brain, a chemistry, a chemical reactions are there that make that the spirit feels pain. Yes, everything we feel, we see, we taste, we smell, it's just possible because the spirit feels it, tastes it. Our body has never any feelings in it. Yes, we can never hurt a a physical thing, because it has no feeling. Yes? It has no capacity to feel. So whatever we feel must get to the spirit. And since the spirit is bound to the body on cortex level, he feels everything that happens in our body, and he governs everything of our body. Mostly, yes, is unconscious, but it is many things are also conscious. So we must know what's going on. So this lady had loving thoughts toward her boyfriend as long as the boyfriend did not betray her. When the boyfriend was unfaithful, she got headaches. Why did she get a headache? Because she was in a situation where she thought that the boyfriend does wrong to her. And so she gets upset, she's hurt, disappointed. And then she takes herself as prisoner. And then her decisions go into her brain, and it makes her brain a wrong electricity. So, on this case, we can see that the pattern is always like this. Someone out of us is doing something that goes against our needs. Do you have a need to be lied to? There's no need to be lied to. So when someone lies to us and we observe it, how do we react? Happy? No, we are getting angry because we think they lied unto us. But that anger does to whom headache? Or stomach pain? It's not to the one who lied to us. It's just to ourselves. So that's why from our body we can learn and must learn that what others are doing is irrelevant for our life. But that's not so easy, because automatically, without knowing it, we react. Because the reaction is just, you hear it, and in the moment you hear it, you already have a feeling. And so we must see that even though this reaction is so fast and is subconscious, we must make it conscious at least when we have the headache, at least when we are dizzy, at least when something is going wrong in our lives. So I found that we have in our spirit, in our subconsciousness, an error. But we don't see this error as an error. Because, you see, science lives from observation. And if you observe all humans, they want the same, so you must think that it's right what they want. And so when we observe humans, how many humans do not want to be loved? None. So all want to be loved, all want to be respected, all want to be appreciated. And I had this lady in my practice. She was 78 years old. And she came to me because she had a cough that she could not stop for 1 month, for 1 year and 2 months. And her primary doctor tried to treat her, but it didn't work, so she asked him to send her to the specialist so that he should take care for her cough. Now she comes to me, she's 78, and I ask her, okay, how long do you have the cough? And she tells it to me. She had a very strange cough. I never heard such a strange kind of cough. She was sitting in the waiting room, and when she came the second time, I knew her by the cough. Yeah? So she had not only a cough for 1.5 years, for the last 10 years, her urine bladder didn't work well. She had to go to the toilet every 30 minutes. When she took strong medication, she could keep her urine for 2 hours. And 20 years ago, she got uterus cancer and was done surgery. She was irradiated, yes, radio treatment, and so that was her story of disease. So 20 years ago, cancer, the uterus, then the blood, the urine bladder, and then the cough. Now imagine you cannot keep your urine and now you cough. It's not a pleasant thing. And especially you have to go every 30 minutes to empty it, even though there's not much in it. And now she sits there with me. And I know why is she sick. You know why she's sick?
No, I'm thinking. No.
Well, because she must have experienced something in her life that keees her in bondage. There must be an error that she believes that makes her body and destroys it. So I asked her history, because I always take the history of the people, how their relationship and what happened. And she was raised up in a family where her mother gave her a lot to work, but her mother never thanked her for what she did. She says, my mother never did say me thank you. She appreciated my brothers and my siblings, but me she just used for service, but she never said thank you to me. Now, is that an error or not? Well, is she the only one that expects from their parents approval, appreciation? Is she the only one? No. But is that what she expects, right or wrong?
Right.
Now, you say right because you are in the truth or in the error? Now, it is because we are in the error. So, when she told me her story, I knew immediately what's her issue. Because you see, when we have relationships, it doesn't matter which one, to spouse, to father, to mother, to children, to pets. Why do we have them? Do we have them to love them? Or do we have them to receive something from them? Well, if we have them to love them, then mother does not need to say thank you. Then, yes, so we must have the relationship in order to receive. You see, the young children, they understand it because it is so. You never go into a relationship to give. You always go to get. And that's the problem. Now she expected from her mother to act according to her need. But mother didn't act according to her need. And now she was in prison. And she does not even see that she's wrong. How can we prove that she's wrong? That her expectation have no ground. By the disease. And by her prisonership. Because we know if we would believe the truth would never make us depressed. The truth can never make us to be fearful. The truth always makes the spirit free. You enjoy truth. But when you take the lie, you destroy yourself. And this is why when we have no measurement for the error, we don't know what's right and wrong. But her demand from her parents is not justified, because if it is justified, can she ever honor her parents? What is honoring the parents? Are you above them or lower than them?
Lower.
You all agree that you can only honor a person that is higher than you. Now, if you judge a person that it owes you something, who is higher? Oh, very well. She's painting and still listening. And she says, you are higher. Yes. So which commandment does she break? The fifth commandment. You see, the fifth commandment is that commandment which is directly connected to health. The whole Bible, the Apostle Paul was so understanding the law, he says, this is the first commandment with a promise. It's the only commandment that has a promise. Because on this you can, and we will see it tomorrow or the next evening when we go to see the law, to really understand it, how it is written in the Ten Commandments, we will see that honoring father and mother is that controlling element that will show if we are in the truth or in the lie. That's why I observed in my first year in my practice that almost all diseases come because we cannot honor our parents. Because we judge them that they are owing us something. How much does God owe you? But some people think God owes them something. So if God owes you nothing, how much do your parent owe you? Okay. How much do you owe it to your children? Nothing. We must know to whom do we owe something or not. So the error is so deep in us that this old lady, she was a Catholic, she was a sincere believer, and she prayed and she worshipped God and she wanted to do the right, but she was not conscious that she was breaking the law. Now how can she be healed? She must understand the error. And that error she must see first before she can ask for help. Now let us look to the error and see what is the error so that we cannot keep the commandment. What makes us to take our parents into court? Can you ever judge and take your parents into court? No matter what they did to you, you have never a right for that. But remember, there are people who were very mistreated by their parents. I have a patient whose father was a pastor, and he abused her sexually from the age of 8 to 17. Now, can she honor her father and her mother? Can she? Is she healthy or sick? She's sick from the age of 17 years old. And it goes more and more because no one can help her change her mind. To think different to that what happened. So let us look to the error in our hearts. And then we know also what I said to these ladies, what they have to do in order to become healthy. But we must first understand what's wrong. And how long is, especially this, both of these ladies, how long are they in prison? For how many years? Many years. Many years. Who takes them into prison? They themselves. Because no one can take the spirit into prison. The spirit can only take himself into prison by believing a lie. And he only can be freed by believing the truth. That's why the battle is between the lie and the truth. That's why Jesus came and said, if you would know the truth will make you free.
Yes.
And a free spirit will bring a healthy body as a result. And I experienced it in those patients that were willing and had the faith to do it. They just came out of it. So remember me at the end to finish the story. But first let us look to the error. While I was studying the human being, at the beginning I thought that the diseases that we have in the body are from different causes. You would assume the same, would you?
Yes.
That's why we have different diagnoses. But something in 2007 at the end happened that I saw, because until then I put my patient into groups. I said, all those have throat pain, dizziness or tinnitus, that's ringing in the ear, or whatever they had, I put them into groups and said, what is the common denominator of each group? And I was studying their histories, and I found common denominators in every group. But in 2007, at the end of 2007, when I looked closer to it, I saw that in all groups, the common denominator was one thought. And it was the same thought in every story. You see, I couldn't believe that every story a person told me had the same thought as the grounds. Would you believe that all negative things have only one thought at the bottom? So if all problems have one thought at the bottom, how many problems do we have? One. That looks good, is it? So we solve one problem and we solve them all. So the tinnitus disappears, the dizziness disappears, the throat pain. And you see, I was most interested in the patient that had all the diseases. There are some people that have it all. They have cancer, they have blood pressure, they have diabetes, they have all what you can think. And then when I got those patients, I said, you must have something, you must tell me your story, because I want to know what's wrong. Why do you have all these kind of things? And I was interested, and I invited my patient to come, that I should take the interview, and yes, they were willing for science sake to come and tell me their stories. And so from their stories, I saw that in no case there was a different thought than the same thing. And that, it took me then, when I observed it, 4 years to be sure it is so. Imagine you realize that all problems are just one thought. Would you be excited?
Yeah.
I was so excited. I thought, this cannot be. One thought makes us all so desperate. But after 4 months, I was convinced, because I didn't find anything. That was at the end of 2007, beginning of 2008. And since then, I made it open. I mean, I bring these meetings, I share what I found out since 2010. I started this, I could call it ministry, or it's a service with doing seminars. I do this since 2010, and there was never a person that stood up and could say, it is not so. Because everyone that has a reason will see and will find that in his life there is no other thought that makes him miserable than this one thought. And that is the thought of loss. If you never lost anything, you can never have an issue. If you're never in a danger to lose something, you never have fear. Fear is excluded. from your life. So there is one thought at the bottom of everything. So today I realize the body is how many? How many bodies do we have? One. So then disease is the multiple expression of one problem. And it doesn't matter where it appears. If it is diabetes, or if it's cancer, or if it's dizziness, or it's throat pain, or if it is psoriasis, or arthritis, or whatever you call it, it's the same expression, or it's a different expression of the same problem. Isn't it nice? Because we have one body. Now, yes, we put the humans in different categories, yeah? I'm an ENT, you're an orthoped, or whatever, an internal medical doctor, because we think the human being can be separated. Can it be? No. Because it has one engine, and it has one common point where all things start. And if you understand that, then we understand nature, because everything in nature starts from one point. You never have two starting points. There is one thing that it starts, and then it turns back there. So, that thought of loss gave me so much to think. So I made up the subconscious, because we're not aware of it. So we have here the body, the cortex, the whole body is in the cortex, and we have here the spirit, and between the two lines we have the subconscious. Now we have the five senses. We see, we hear, we feel, we smell, and we taste. And everything that we experience through our senses goes into our subconscious and is there put into two categories. It is either gain or loss. I put, for the reason of being complete, indifference as well. But what you are not interested in, it does not affect you. You don't need to put it neither in gain nor in loss, because it is not something that is interesting in your life. So everything you hear, or let's say you see, you must put either in gain, in indifference, or loss. If everything you hear, you must put it into gain, indifference, or loss. What you feel, you must put it into loss, indifference, or gain. What you smell, you must put it into the same categories. What you taste is a gain, an indifference, or a loss. This is how all things are worked down to only two categories in life. And you see, it's very nice put together, and this is how God created it. It's a mechanism that no one can change, because the subconscious is functional. And how God set us spirit to function, He will always function. It can never be changed. We can only break Him. So we must search for what? For gain or for loss?
For gain.
For gain. God made us to achieve the gain. And is there any barrier to how much gain you can achieve?
No.
No. This is how God created us for eternity. For eternity to grow in gain. Going forward and forward. Gaining knowledge, gaining wisdom and experience and all this. All was made for eternity. We must achieve gain. We were made for the gain. And it's interesting when I have business people. You know why business people don't get sick? As long as they are on the gaining level, no virus hits them. Why? Because they are on the winning side. If you're on the winning side, you're a happy person, and on the winning side, nothing can touch you. Because you're governed by gain. how great is the gain. So, and then we must give the decision. We have one decision for gain, and that is yes. And with our decision yes, when we say yes, we make the electrical current to our cortex. We have a yes for the gain, and we have a no for the loss. Because loss must be always avoided. So we were made to say yes to gain and no to loss. And our brain only perceives the electricity. The brain does not know what we think or not. The brain just gets the impulse or not the impulse. Like when we put something into the hard drive, we put it with yes or no. Yeah? It's electricity and no electricity. And this is the general rule how things in nature function. You can only put into a physical thing a physical information that the spirit then can read back as a spiritual information. Let's see. Do you think this screen knows what I have written on it?
No.
What is it in the screen? What is this for the screen?
Information.
What kind of information? Physical or spiritual?
Spiritual.
Physical. Physical. It's just yes and no. So we can store. I give even a more easy example. When you write something on your paper, does your paper know what you write on it? No. But the paper receives it, and you can read it back and say, oh, where is the paper that I can read it again to see it? But the information is spiritual, but it is written with a physical element. That's an interesting thing that we should think about. So, now, since we were made to achieve gain and to avoid loss by saying yes and no, what makes us sick? When we cannot avoid loss. If we could always avoid loss, we would never get sick. Because then we would have always control of our lives. So let me put this into another picture. So here we have the consciousness, and then under the line we have the subconscious, the heart. And here we have the will. And the will is that which shows us our needs, because we can never take a decision without being conscious. There must be a certain conscious level that we can take decisions. So that's very important. The decision is made subconsciously, but we must be conscious to make the decision. There must be a certain level of consciousness to do a decision. So in our will, the H stays here for hunger, then for freezing, F, and T for thirst, and S for sweating. It's too warm. So when I see that, and I would ask someone, give me some water, I want to demonstrate something when I drink. Thank you. We must be aware of what is there into our needs. And also in our will, we have our spiritual needs. And I came to understand that in my personality, in my will, H is harmony. That's my first need. And everything I do through harmony. And there might be other people that have the first things, justice. And you have people that have the first is justice. I tell you, that's a great problem when something happens that is injustice. They die. Then liberty, truth, thank you, wisdom, or truth, and all this. So all our needs must be conscious of, that we might satisfy them. Now, let's see, I'm thirsty. how do I take the decision to drink? How do I take the decision to drink? We know in the subconscious, and here is the green is the body. The body has only plus and minus, and the neutral line. And so the spirit is above the cortex. This is me, and he has two thoughts: loss and gain. And he has a yes for the gain and a no for the loss. Now, how do I take the decision to say yes to drink? What must drinking be to me?
Gain.
It must be gain. Now, I start drinking. When do I stop?
When you feel this way, yeah.
When you
When
feel
your brain
right.
got enough.
When do I stop?
When you need to breathe.
When you feel that it's a loss.
When I think it is a loss. You can never stop if you don't think it's a loss. You will drink, continue. So that's why we need, for all decisions, a yes and a no. And that God created us like this, we can see in Eden. God said to Adam and Eve, if you eat, what do?
You will die.
You lose.
Yeah.
When you don't eat,
Gain.
you gain. And what did the serpent say?
If you eat, you gain.
He came and said, if you eat, you gain, and if you don't eat, you lose. Now, what was the decision of Adam and of Eve?
To eat or to gain.
Well, it's always a gain. It's nothing wrong to want to gain. There is no selfishness in gaining. What was the wrong? It's how you get to the gain. So God says you gain when you don't eat. The devil says you get the gain when you eat. And to Eve and to Adam, there was just one single decision, that is, in whom they trust, to have to say the truth. And since they mistrusted God and took the devils, they had to eat, because you go to the gain, you cannot lose. And so she must eat if she believes that eating is a gain. But if she would know from the beginning God's word that that is a loss, could she ever eat? No. It would have sat forever. If Eve came to Adam and Adam would have said, oh, poor, you have eaten that, let's go to our father to ask him to see what we do about it. Did he do that? No, he tried to fix himself the problem and said, maybe Eve is right. Look to her how beautiful she is. Look to her how her tongue is just speaking all the nice things. And he said, maybe she is right. Because Eve said, God has withheld us something. Look at me, I'm in a higher sphere now of living. I'm more than a human. I became... And Adam said, let's see. When I first discovered the gain and the loss, I was so excited and I said to God, Lord, if it's this what makes humans sick, then it must be written in the Bible. I cannot discover at the end of time something that is so important to know. And so I said, Lord, where did you write in the Bible the heart? Are there much Bible verses about the heart in the Bible?
Yes.
You know around how many? There are many, I believe, over 800. But take it and see it. And the first mention of the heart was in Genesis 6:5, where it says, and God saw that every thought of man was evil in his heart. Every thought of a man was evil in his heart. He was irrecuperable. He could not be ever brought back to reason and to change. So, you know where I found the description of the heart and who gave it to me? It was in the center of the Sermon of the Mount. You find exactly this description. You have read it, but you never saw it because you didn't know about what Jesus was speaking. Is he speaking about the heart in the Sermon on the Mount? Remember? The Sermon on the Mount is in Matthew 5 to 7. And some believe in some, how we call this, certain way to write things, and that which is in the center is the most important. However it is, chiastic, yeah, structure. And in the center of the Sermon of the Mount, it says so in Matthew 6:19. Do not, what? Have treasure on earth, where the thieves can, moth or the rust can take it and the thief can steal it. But what do you? Put treasures in heaven. How is in English the word?
How do you make treasures in heaven?
Make treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rot can eat it or destroy it, nor thieves can steal it. Because where your treasure is, there also is your heart. Is it simple? Very clear. The heart needs what? A treasure. It needs gain. You know when people feel so well when they are in love? You know why they have such a big feeling? Because they think they gained how much? When they found a person that they fell in love, how much did they gain? They think this is the diamond, this is, yes? And so they so treasure the other person and they feel so well. How long?
Till the first loss.
Until they find some scratches on the diamonds. And then the gain lowers and lowers. And when it is iron, you still have it. But when it gets rusty iron, it's lost. And what do you do then? You throw him out. Because you cannot stay in loss. People come to me and say, I don't have any feelings for my husband anymore. I don't love him anymore. I say, I know why. You don't appreciate him. It's not a gain anymore for you. That's why you have no feelings. Because if it would be a gain, and if it would be a great gain, how good would you feel? Wonderful. So the more you love the others, the more you appreciate them, I mean give value, who has the gain? You.
Is it thinking? It's the thinking.
Yes, this is how it should be. But how can you put gain into another person when you judge him for what he does? So, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus explained it clearly. We must go for a treasure. Do you want to be rich? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Where?
In the heart.
In heaven. You see, all the riches on earth, they're going to disappear. Yeah? But, whatever you have in the treasure of heaven is gain for ever. You see, the rich young ruler was rich. And Jesus said, you know how to have a treasure in heaven? What did he say to him? Go sell and give it all to the poor, then you will have a treasure in heaven. Did he believe it? Do you? How much do you sell? Now it's good to be poor. Because nothing keeps you to not give it. But we'll come back to that. But just say it very clear. In the Sermon on the Mount, you find exactly the description of the heart. Now, Jesus didn't finish with the description of the heart when he said, where your treasure is, there is your heart. Because he continues and says, the eye is the light of the body. If your eye be single, your whole body is light. But if your eye is evil, then your whole body will be darkness. And if that which should be light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. He either loves the one and hates the other, and you know how. You either love God or serve the mammon. Because you must have a gain. And you either serve for the gain of God or for the gain of mammon. So this is a description of the whole heart. And I find it very nicely because who describes it? He who made it. And he knows best how it works. I'm so glad. But you know, there was other people in the Bible that have described the heart. You know who was most studying the heart of man in the Bible? It was the wise King Solomon. And he wrote a dissertation that should be a school item in every class. And that is, which dissertation? What is Solomon's dissertation about the heart? It is Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is the most profound explaining of the heart of man. And if you now know it, and you read Ecclesiastes, you will find a world of great, great knowledge. Ecclesiastes and the whole Bible becomes a different book when you know about what it is speaking. Because Solomon says, I went out to search for what?
Wisdom.
For gain. In Ecclesiastes, it's for gain. And he came to the end, he says, all is vanity. But did he see it with the good eye or with the evil eye? That all is vanity. With the evil eye. We don't find that Jesus says, all I do is vanity. We don't find that Paul says, I fought a fight and it was for nothing. The evil eye betrayed Solomon that he was searching the treasure on earth. And in what? In women? Read Ecclesiastes. He describes it all.
Science.
Yes? He made his house gardens and horses and whatever, you know? But he came to the conclusion, it is all vanity. Because he was looking to it, to the wrong eye. And when was it vanity for him? When did he discover that it is vanity what he searched for?
He tried everything.
When he lost it. When he saw, I said, I worked for this and now I must die and someone else will have it. I did this and someone else will inherit it. This is unfair, he said. And so he was upset. He got into depression and said, I don't do anything anymore. Because he was in his deception and how he viewed the things. So we have two eyes in our hearts. And our eye, or we have one eye that determines every action that we do, and that is either the evil eye or the good eye. And let us see the good eye and the evil eye. The one says, gain is when you receive. And the other eye says, when you give, it is gain. So which eye do you like? Which one is the truth? So, When receiving is gain, then not receiving is loss. Or you receive too little for what you invested, or something is taken away from you. That would be loss. But if giving is gain, then not to give or is loss, or to keep is loss. Now you see these two eyes. They express where is the gain, how is the gain to be achieved. So what is the difference between the two eyes? Can anyone see it?
One light, one dark.
Yes, one is blue and the other is dark. But what's the difference?
One is the evil.
One is what?
One is the evil, one is the good. Which is the evil, which is the good? But in which consists the evilness of the eye? We are not yet at the bottom of the eye, but
Receive.
Selfishness or love?
well, no, we are not yet there. Where are you responsible for the gain and for the loss, and where are others responsible for your gain and for your loss?
You are responsible here.
Giving and not to give or keep is whose action? Only.
Yours.
Mine. Receiving, to not receive, receive too little, something is taken away. Whose action is it?
Others.
Others. There was one of the greatest revelations I had once in my practice. After the last patient went away, and I had the thought that no one can do me loss. I said, this is fantastic. And I checked that thought 1,000 times. Can anyone do you harm and loss? According to the good eye, no one. But according to the evil eye, everyone. So the problem in life comes in our hearts when we cannot avoid loss. But I saw in all the stories of my patient, it is not loss in itself, but it is that you consider it is a personal loss. If you would never consider loss personal, it would not make you to be sick. Because there is loss when a person dies. But who loses? If your neighbor's child died because the car went over it, you can mourn with him. But will you have sleepless nights? No, because you say it is not mine. But if it's yours, I can tell you so many stories of people who lost their children by just a car accident. And I see them, and are they happy or unhappy? Are they sick or are they healthy? They're sick because the child is of how much value? High or low value? High value. I could say the highest value. And it's a loss when happens something to the child. But if it's not your loss, you can leave it alone. But if it's yours, you cannot leave it alone. You know why Jesus said in the gospel, in his Sermon on the Mount, search treasures in heaven and not on earth. What was his only argument to search the treasure in heaven? What was his only argument? What was the security in heaven?
Nobody can touch it.
Nobody can make you lose it. And if nobody can make you lose your treasure, how dangerous is your life? None. Solomon said it. He said, keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. If no one can take away your treasure, you are living eternal. Because this is eternal life. Jesus said it to the rich young man, said, sell everything you have, that you might have a treasure in heaven. Because the man asked, what should I do to have eternal life? And he says, you need a treasure in heaven. Because there where your treasure is, there is your life. We must have a treasure that cannot be lost. But if we have something that can be taken away from us, we are destroying ourselves because we believe that this is the truth. Now our reason can understand that it's better that in my action the gain and the loss is. And the law also says it like this. But we all believe that others can make us lost. That's why we have to fight with each other. We have to make boundaries. But if no one can do us loss, how much fear would we ever have again? It would be fine. No, we would have no loss, no fear, because no one can do us any harm. Wouldn't that be nice? So, every problem comes because we take the loss personal. So there must be something wrong. And I tell you, the more sick a person is, the higher, I think, is the loss of his treasure. You always find people that lost their treasure. And if you have a treasure in heaven, no one can make your life miserable. Like for Jesus, no one could make his life miserable. But we're not aware of our hearts. Now, what kind of a heart do you have? Where do you have the evil eye or the good one? Eye? What do you think? Now both, we don't have both, but yes, we must have both. But we can always test it. You know, Jesus says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So everything comes out of the heart. That's why on our voice we can make lie detectors. Because you can never fool that. So, let's make a deal, an experiment. We have two doors here, two exit doors on this side. And on one exit door, you receive $1,000. And on the other exit, you give $100. Where would you go?
To receive.
You can only go where the gain is. You can never go where the loss is. It's impossible. You're set like that. You must go where the gain is. And of course, you must find another way out. But you don't go to that way out. Where you have to pay $1,000. Because we don't rejoice when we give. Yes? We rejoice when we receive. And we don't see that that's just a deception of our hearts. So where does this evil eye come from? And I discovered the thing step by step until I get to the bottom of the evil eye. And I found out that the evil eye brings and makes things personal through his identity. The deepest thing that I found in the spirit of man is who he thinks he is. And I found it out according to his motivation. We all know that we have in our heart a selfishness and pride. But we have never defined it correctly so that we know it. I define selfishness by the sentence, I have property or possession. And the pride is, I can create something. That's why you always first give in order to receive. That's the motivation. Giving to receive is always wrong. Because you will see that's not possible. It's a deception. The evil eye is a deception because it starts with the idea, who am I? So let us see, what does the human being think he is? Every problem that I found out is that we take things personally. The child is whose child? My child. The husband is whose husband? The wife is whose wife? Are you possessive? Yes. Possessivity arises from identity. Is your arm yours?
Yes.
Is your body yours?
Yes.
True or lie? I hope so. You see, Christians should know that their bodies are whose? God's. Their children are God's. So when a child passes away, yes, they suffer, but for whom do they suffer? No, they suffer for God, because God has lost something. They don't care for themselves. But what do we do in reality? We care for ourselves. We even don't see it that it's wrong. But when the headache comes, when the disappointment comes, when depression appears, we should ever see that something must be wrong in the way I think. When your body is under pressure, you must realize, oh, something is in the input that I do the wrong thing. So, if we would lose possessivity, we would have 95% of our problems solved. If we would understand that nothing is ours, and how can we understand it? We must know humans can never have property or possession because they cannot create anything. If you create anything, you can say that's mine. And I have this kind of people who believe that they are creatures. They are mothers, they say, if I would have known you, I would have aborted you. And the father says, I make you and I kill you. You like that, yes? Well, we don't do it so obviously like these people. We do it more subtle, but we do it the same. So, possessivity is absolutely wrong. Nothing is ours. Because nothing that we are comes from us. We saw in one night that what we are is inherited. So can we ever claim that it is mine? No. And I can you tell story of stories. There was one lady, she had an accident with her arm, and her arm was ruptured and the plexus here, and she couldn't use her arm. And I saw her after 7 years when she had strong pain in her arm. And I said, that pain cannot come from the accident. And so I asked her, how does she think about the accident? How does she think about God? And she says, well, God was with me until I had the accident. Now He punishes me. So whose arm is it? But for whom did she use the arm? No. For herself. You see, if she would have been, as a Christian, known, this arm is to serve God, then when God puts His arm into retirement, you would say, God, thank you, you put your arm into retirement, I still have a left hand, and I can help you with the left hand.
True.
And how much pain would you have? But you now see yourself and feel pity because it's your arm. And you go to church and you pray and you don't even know that you're deceived. Because you said, I worked for my children to keep them in school. I said, oh, whose children are they?
God's children.
If they're God's, God will take care. But if they're hers, she must take care. That's deep deception. People claim their body as theirs. But they only can claim that their body is theirs when they made it. And who of us can say, I made myself? So, the second problem is pride. What is the issue of pride? What does the human think he can create? Because you must be a creator, that you must think that something is your possession. So what does the human think he can create? So let us see the needs of the human being and go quickly through them. Do you need oxygen?
Yes.
Can you create it?
No.
How do you satisfy it?
By breathing it.
Breathing.
By take to give. First taking to give. And you take it from the air. So, do you need water?
Yes.
Can you create it?
No.
No. How do you satisfy the need? take to give, and you take it from the water well. The food, do you need it?
Yes.
Can you create it?
No.
No? How do you satisfy the need? You take, in order to give, you take it from the earth. And now we come to love. Where does love come from? Okay, so can you create love?
No.
No. So if you cannot create love, then you need to take it from somewhere. You know, when you would take love from God in order to take to give, you could never be upset of anyone around you. Because you say, I love you, and you don't answer me back. That's why people think love is their own creation. They think love comes from themselves. That's why they even have the idea that there exists something like self-love. It looks like, you know, imagine the lung would say, the air or the oxygen that I breathe, I breathe in, comes from me. Does that the lung think?
No.
But our mind thinks, when I love, I use something that comes from myself. That's why you can say self-love. You see, Rogers was a psychologist. He discovered self-love. Until then, people were thinking they need to be loved. And Rogers saw, smart enough, that that is a stupid idea. To just wait from others to love you. So he said, you don't need to wait that others should love you. You just love yourself. Isn't that a good solution? Try to do it. Does it work? No, it worked never. Because love can never be self-love. It is just the same deception like the idea to be loved. It just was thinking, and he found it out and saw it is a stupid idea to want something from another. And then he says, now do it to yourself. Love yourself and everything is fine. But it won't work. Because people in the deception wait to receive something, not to give. They don't see that the problem is in giving and that they want to receive. They don't see that their problem is in receiving. They do not say, oh, I do not love enough, that's why I feel so miserable. They say, others do not love me enough, that's why I feel so miserable. Others don't do what I have to do, that's what they should do, that I feel good. So, we give to receive. That's our motivation of our hearts. But you only can give to receive when you produce it. Because then, you must be someone. And what is the identity? The man thinks that love is his creation. Righteousness is his creation. Justice and freedom and all this is his production. Some parents say, I give you liberty. Can you give liberty to your child?
No.
A 13-year-old child was once in my practice and said, I feel like home, like in a prison. And I said, what would you do if you would be 18? What did he say?
Leave.
I would leave without even thinking. But now she's still dependent on her parents on financial things. And now I said to her, I spoke with her alone, because I knew the parents don't like sometimes what I said. I said, do you know that your liberty no one can take away from you? It is there in God and you can use it. But why is she feeling in prison? From whom does she expect liberty? From the parents. So she is in slavery to the parents. If she would know the truth would make her
Free.
And the parents are in slavery to her child because the father, who was the main problem, because you give restrictions to your children. And what happens then? So, the answer is, who does man think he is? You know, there are only two identities possible. There are only two possible identities. You're either creature or a creator. There are no more identities possible. And I put here together the functional difference between a creator and a creature. And the functional thing is that God, and you might wonder why I paint God as a circle. You know why I paint God as a circle? Because he is a circle. He says, I am the and the end. I am the Alpha and the Omega. Everything starts from him and everything turns back to him. Does the Bible say that?
Yes.
That's very clear. So God is a creator because he lives out of himself. Humans and all creatures must take in order to give. They are an open system, while God is a closed system. As much as we can understand about it, of course. Just from the function. God is under no law because he's independent. We are under law because we need to take in order to give. So this is the functional difference between a creator and a creation. So what does man need to think he is when he thinks his body is his child is his love that he spends is his time is his, and all what he has is his? What does he mean? Must think about himself?
He must think he's a creator.
He must think his God is a creator. You see, the devil could only sin because he wanted to be God. Adam and Eve could only mistrust God because they wanted to be more as a human. They wanted to be God. You can never sin if you don't want to be God. So, let's see a few proofs that man really thinks that he's God. On the behavior of man, you can check everything. What is the worst behavior that we have? It is that we want to have power over others. Do you have that inclination?
Over children.
Alexandra, Sandra, do you have the inclination to have power over your mom?
No.
No, you're a liar. But that's it. You have it. When you get angry, we have that inclination to work and force others our own will. Whenever you get upset, Sandra, whenever we have any issues, then we want to have power over others. The constant fighting between the genders is a proof. You get married to fight. Anyone here who has experienced that? You get married to fight who is strong. Yes.
Not constant.
It's constant fight. Look to your life and you will have to agree it, or am I the only one that fights for my rights? So, do you have the tendency to control others?
Yeah.
Especially the children must be under control. But thank God you cannot control them. Have you ever been a judge over others?
Yes.
If you're a judge over others, who must you be? Who is the measurement for all things?
God.
Then you must be God, if you're the judge. You would never be a judge over others if you not would consider yourself higher than the other, and you will not consider yourself God. Humans ask for worship. Isn't that a bad thing? So, they ask for praise, appreciation, respect, and applause. And I finish here the story so that we can go home soon. The story of this old lady, she was 70 years old, and she said, my mother never said thank you to me. Why did she expect it? She was thinking she is God. and her mother owes her respect and appreciation. And so she was caught in her own heart, and her diseases proved the heaviness of her heart. She was broken. And when she told me her story, I saw the deception. And even she was 78 years old, I challenged her. And I said to her, you see, the way you see things is wrong. Your body proves it. The law proves it. And so I sent her home the second time she came for counseling, and I gave her the challenge that I give to my patient. It's a challenge of faith. I said to her, if you would ask God to change the way you see your mom, because can she love her mom?
Yeah.
Can she love her mom if she never appreciated her?
No.
No. She is just not loving her mom, and when you don't love your mom, you die. The same thing happens with your father. The same thing happens with anyone. Because the demand to love is as the demand to breathe for life. It's not a choice. Yes, it is a choice. You cannot love anymore, you die. Like you cannot drink anymore and you die. But love feels the most best. Why would we not love? It's better than eating. It's better than drinking. It's better than sleeping. Why would we stop having that good feeling when we love? Is it not irrational that what we do? So this lady cannot love her mom. That's why she cannot respect her. And she's in prison for 78 years, or at least, let's say 50 years. And now I tell her, if you're willing, I said to her, to go home and ask God to help you see your mom with different eyes, He will heal you. So it's just a matter of reason. It's not a matter of can to love. It's just a matter, do you want to love her? Well, I have patients where I promise that they say, rather I die than to love my mom again. I say, well, that's your choice. And so this woman went home, and when she came 3 weeks later for the next counseling, she didn't cough anymore. And I said, what happened? She was waiting an hour and a half in my waiting room, and when I saw who waited, she never coughed. I said, you didn't cough once. I said, doctor, I don't cough anymore since I was here with you. I said, what happened? He said, doctor, I did exactly like you said to me. I went that night home, and when she prayed her bedtime prayer, she just said to God, almost identical what I told her to pray. I don't say people what to pray or how to pray, I just tell them the content. And she said, since I said that prayer, that I should see my mother different, that I may be able to love her, my cough disappeared. My urine bladder functions perfectly. I don't need to rise up in the night, not once. My doctor cannot believe it. Her friends cannot believe it, that she doesn't need to go any 30 minutes to the toilet. She was just relieved. And I had tears in my eyes, because I was also an unfaithful person. But you see, what happened in her mind? Was she relieved?
Yes.
Did she now love her mom? Not necessarily, but she was willing. She saw that something is wrong, and she was willing to do it. And God honors that.
Yes.
And she's not the only patient that I have who experienced that. And I promised to some patients, I have a doctor colleague, he's blind. And he got blind because he has an issue with both of his parents. Also his bladder, his urine bladder he has multiple sclerosis. And he got blind in a second, without any forewarning. His eyes just were shut down. And now, when I heard his story, when I understood it, he's my patient now for many years. I think it is at least 5 years, where I promised to him, I said to him, if you are praying to God, God, give me love for my mom, God will heal you. Would you do it?
Yeah. Yes.
This gentleman cannot do it. Why can he not do it? You see, he's a physician and a philosopher. He has 2 doctors. He has 2 PhDs, an MD and a PhD. And he does not believe that his eyes can be opened by his Creator. And so he says, this guy, he says to the nurses that take care for him, he says, this guy believes that I can see again. And I said, yes, I believe it. Prove me wrong. Pray the prayer and prove me that it doesn't work. You know, he cannot do it because he has such a great indignation against his parents for what they did to him. When he was young, they sent him into the monastery, and I don't know whatever happened there. And he has such an anger in himself. He's caught in his mind. And he could be saved for now 5 years. I go sometimes to him and say, look, for 5 years you already could see. I still try to challenge him, to reason with him, and I hope when he might be at the end of his life on his bed, he's over 70, he would say, let's do the doctor's will. And let's pray for it. How much would it cost? It costs everything to him. Because it would all his pride. He must recognize that he has no love. In this little prayer, every confession is included. You know that? It shows that I do not love my mom. It shows that I have no power to do it. I need your love, God, in order to be able to give it to my mom. And you would be free. Because he who can love is free. But as long as we wait for worship others, he waits his mom to pay his debts, or their debt to him. He will never get free. So there is available liberty and health and the freedom of the mind. But we must understand the truth. So the main or the greatest proof that we think we're God is that we give before we take. You see, I picked it before. God has no needs. He's a closed system. He's just giving. And he can expect that something comes back. But humans only take in order to give. When they now give before they take, they must believe in their subconsciousness, their gods. If not, if you always would give just what you took before, how much people would owe you anything? How much? I hope that nobody owes you nothing then. You're free because you never gave anything to others. You see, I'm happy when I sometimes invite people to the restaurant and they say, oh, you pay for us. I say, I don't pay for you. I didn't give you anything. It's God's money. I'm happy to spend them. When they say, I thank you for your time, I say, oh, it's not my time and I'm happy to spend them for you. Because it's not mine. I never give you anything from me. We raised 6 foster children. Did I give them anything for me to them? Do they owe me anything? Easy to battle? You raised your own children. Do they owe you something? You know that they don't owe you something, but in your heart, you are sitting on the throne and say, I made you, I gave you, you must now give me back. It's a disastrous thing. It destroys all our relationships. All that God made to be the most and most enjoyable thing is destroyed by this terrible error. You know, all religions believe or preach, false religions preach that we are gods. The atheists, the agnostics, and humanists believe that they think they are spiritually independent. That's why they are atheists. And my colleague, the scientists, they have the theory of evolution. And you know what the theory of evolution proves? If we are evolved from a lower being, then who is the highest being? Us. So we must be God. We made ourselves. That's evolution. And I put it all on one picture here, many ideologies and one root. And therefore, there is never possible on this tree unity. You see, we have on this tree the religious people, the humanists, the atheists, the agnostics, the scientists, and they all have the same ground. Here they fight each other, but at the bottom they are identical. You would never have a fight except between gods. Creatures don't fight with each other. Yes? They are fighting because they're gods. Look what they think. They esteem themselves higher than the other. Do you do that? You do it always. You esteem yourselves higher than the other. You have better knowledge and better abilities. You must be in competition. You must be in contest. You must have a power struggle. To struggle over others with power. You must judge. You control. You have violence. You war. And you murder. And Jesus says, when you get angry with your brother, you have committed murder. But let's look to the Christian community or to the religious community. Can they ever be united? Catholic Church, Orthodox Church, Lutherans, evangelical churches, Jehovah's Witness, Salvation Army, and all other religions. You know what they have all in common? They all believe they're gods. And so they esteem themselves higher than the others. Is there fights between religions and denominations? Is there a fight? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Why is the fight there? Why are big walls between us? Because everyone is right. Everyone has all truth. Yes, we have competition, we have contest, we have struggle for power, we judge, we control, we have violence. What's the difference? You know why religion doesn't have an impact? There's no difference. But it would be a difference when we would know who we are. It would be a difference if we would know that we are a creature. I haven't have the slides here now, but I will bring it tomorrow. If I'm a creature, what would be my motivation? I would love. I would know I have no property. Everything I take, I give, I took before. I would know I cannot create because I'm a creature. I can just put things together. And I take in order to give. And that's the truth. That's the single eye. And that is the evil eye. And you find it in the Bible again and again. When I once discovered this, 2007, 2008, and from then on, you see that Jesus Christ in his Gospels almost always speaks about the heart and the evil eye. He speaks and says to his disciples, he who wants to keep his life will lose it. He who gives his life for the gospel will gain it. Isn't that clear? All the definitions you have here, you will see that Jesus is mainly speaking about the heart of man. But his disciples didn't even understand it. When he spoke about the sourdough, about what did he speak of the Pharisees? Did he speak about food? Bread? He spoke about the evil eye. And when you go through all the parables, you will read the Bible with different eyes when you know about what and where is the problem. So humanity has only one problem, and that is, who am I? If that problem is solved, everything in our life is solved. When we are back to be creatures, children of God, everything disappears. Every fight, every competition, every contest for right. We are just peaceful people, like God created us. And I want to become such a person. I want to become one day fully known that I am a creature. I am not a God. No one owes me anything. And I owe anyone, only that, what I take from God and give to him. So any questions for tonight? Yes.
I doesn't understand what you say about judging, because how do you, is there any
To reason. Yes, we reason. We must make a little bit of difference. We reason together. God wants to reason with us. We must think and we must evaluate. Yeah, do you know the first picture that I have here? We have a balance. Yes? This is you can say judgment, or this is reasoning, balancing, evaluating. Yes, we must evaluate. But judging means I evaluate a person, which I have no right to. But I can evaluate the deeds and the acts. Yes, I can say a person says a lie, but I cannot say you are a liar. If I say I'm a liar, you're a liar, you have judged him, because you think you see in his heart. You cannot see in his heart. He might think he says the truth. You can say that's a lie, but you cannot call anyone a liar, because then you're a judge. So we must understand, we must judge, we must reason, but always only actions to the subject, but not persons, because we cannot look into persons, and persons are not ours. So let God do every judging of a person. We cannot say that's a bad person. If we say that's a bad person, we have judged him. We can say he does bad things. That's correct. That's a big difference between saying he's a bad person and he did bad things. Please. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What does it mean when you say that the churches fight?
The churches fight?
Thinking
Well-
that they're God.
Pardon?
Thinking that they're God.
Yes. So we find in the church humans that think they are gods. And so that's why they fight. And that church is right where there is no fight. Would you agree with me? Because they prove. Jesus says, the world will see that you are my children when there is what? Love. And how much fighting for who is higher is in love? No one. But as long as we're fighting, we prove that something in us is wrong. We didn't understand what is right. Because love doesn't fight with each other. Yes.
Matthew chapter 18. Jesus is talking and says, when your brother sins against you, then you have to talk to him and try to bring him back on the right way. When he doesn't listen to you, then you have to bring somebody else. We all know that story, right?
Yes.
So in that particular instance, it looks like we also need something from our brothers. We need them not to sin against us, and if they do, we are actually responsible to talk to them about it. It's not just giving to them; it's also we need to receive something from them, which is a certain way in which they treat us. And if they are our brothers and they don't do that, we have a responsibility to talk to them about it. So the level in which they don't listen to us, we have to bring others, we have to bring them to the church. And also, actually, we have to come treat them as somebody who doesn't belong, as our brothers.
Yeah, that's fine, but the question is, for whom do I do it? For me or for them? Because every action must have a motivation. And if I think I correct him for my sake, I'm wrong. But if I correct him for God's sake, I'm right. But then I will not force him. I will knock at the door and say, hey, look, you do something wrong. And you have to be responsible for it, and I would encourage you, or I would suggest to you, you should stop it. But if not, then of course, then you go, and this is an organizational matter, it's not a matter between persons, it's an organizational matter, and in organizational matters, we are all together in a job business. And in a job business, it's about situations. Yes? If my helper in my work, the lady that works for me, doesn't do the work right, yeah? I'd say the church is the same thing. It's a business. Then she disqualifies herself for the job. And so I can say, look, would you do that again? For what do you do it? And if we take it to the church, we would say, okay, it's not my decision, let's see if some from the church can help. And if they don't listen to the church and to the church leaders, then you disfellowship them because you say, you're not able to work with us. That's purely business
In
issues.
that context, it's not a business issue because it's if my brother sins against me, not against the church, it's not doing something institutional, but it's a personal relationship between me and the brother. He sins against me. So it's not really an organization or a job issue, it's a relationship problem between me and my brother that needs to be addressed, which is like, you know, there is something that shows like giving and receiving.
Yeah, but that's why I say the law must help us. If the brother can sin against me, I must be God. Because you can sin only against God. No, the Bible doesn't say that. That's our interpretation in the Bible. So, that's why I say the words do not matter. We must see what is true according to the law. And according to the law, if someone can sin against you, you must be God. Because the Bible says you can only sin against God. And only God can forgive. We will talk about that one night as well. Because if not, we take it personally. That's why I say, when you take it personally, you are caught yourself. And you get never out of it. It depends now what it does. If it's a small thing, then you might handle it somehow. But if you think someone hurt you personally, if you think he sins against you, then you must be God. And then you destroy yourself. And disease proves, and the law, that you must be wrong. This is my main argument, because I have people in my practice, they were hurt, they were done wrong, they were abused. And I say, yes, they will take an account to God. They didn't do it to you. If they think it was done to them, they are in a prison because the other can never pay back. The other can never make it right. If your father abused you for 8 or 7, 9 years, he can never pay it. He can say, how many lives should he suffer to pay back what he did? There is no possibility. And the poor victim destroys itself because it thinks it is sinned against me. So we must know, we do and correct our brothers, not for our sake, because they cannot harm us. We want to help them, and by wanting to help them, we want to help God to save a soul. But it's not about us. Yes?
I was wondering about the statement when Jesus said, love others as you love yourself.
Yes, the statement, love others as you love yourself, is most confusing because we do not take the law as an interpreter for this. Jesus says, love the others as equals with you. That's the right thing to see it. Because we are all equal, then, of course, we will love. But in the moment I think I'm higher than you, I cannot love you, except you serve me. So that's the meaning. Even I'm not a Hebrew reader, and I don't think even it's important, but if I remember well, in the Hebrew language is exactly that meaning there. It's not loving myself like I love others like I love myself, because then love must be my own production. But we can also translate it and say, as you have interest in yourself, you have interest in your brother, but then you're equal with him. And we will see it when we see the law in one of the nights of the 10 Commandments, and then they are concluded in the love God and love your neighbor. Yeah, we must know what is it, and we will see how beautiful the law is. Take in order to give.
I'm sure you have more questions, even if you don't ask them, but if we look at the time, I think we should stop right here. And of course, this is not the last meeting with Dr. Mueller. Tomorrow night, at the same time, same location, Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, right here at High Point Seventh-day Adventist Church. Well, thank you, Dr. Mueller, for challenging our minds again. And well, may God bless you and bless us as we think about what we have learned tonight.